let's get into the draft then.
Let's do it.
Let's start it. So I'm firing it up on PFF. 27 teams want to trade with us, Keegan.
Yeah, it's the number one pick, right?
Number one pick, 27 teams want to trade. Now, Browns at 3, Giants at 4, Jaguars at 5, Panthers at 6. Look, everyone, let's just go. Keegan, the realistic teams I think would trade up. I think the New York Giants at 4.
Yep.
Because there has to be the rightful return. I'm not going to trade back just to get to 6 because there is leverage in the situation. I think it's 2 firsts. I think it's 2 seconds and possibly a player, a starting level player,
right,
or possibly another pick, maybe 3 firsts. I think the Giants, I think the Jets at 7. We'll see if Robert Kraft would allow that. The Raiders at 8. All of that makes sense to me. Who do you see that would make, those are teams that would make sense to trade back with?
Yeah, just a little background on those two, because I agree with the same exact teams. It's New York at 4.
Yep.
It's New York again. The Jets
New Jersey
at 7.
At 5.
New Jersey at 7. And Las Vegas at 8, right?
Yeah.
Those are the 3 teams because they're the ones looking for a quarterback. I think Cleveland will also be looking for a quarterback, but Deshaun Watson is in place. They restructured things so they can kind of figure that out. Maybe they'll bring in a young guy and try to just eat the money over the next few years for Deshaun, but only moving back 2 spots. I don't know what you're going to get in terms of a return.
Yeah.
Jacksonville doesn't need a new quarterback. They just paid their guy. Carolina has to feel decent with Bryce Young. They have so many other needs to fill. Like, I think that's actually the worst team in the NFL is Carolina. So
yeah, and Carolina, I mean, they really need to get better on defense.
Right.
At 6, they are Mason Graham, Abdul Carter,
right, Ted McMillan, Will Johnson area. All of those are needs. Right.
I don't see them giving away the future to get 1-1 because, yes, they could use a Travis Hunter. Let's go there. It doesn't make sense for them. Yes, they can use a quarterback, but next year's quarterback draft is good. Right. So, yeah, I don't think Carolina's plausible. I don't think it's a practical trade partner.
Let's explore those 2 options because you have control. So I'm going to be barking orders at George when I can.
Okay.
I want to look at what New York's willing to offer, what we can get from them, and then what Las Vegas is willing to offer. Because I think with the player thing that you talked about, I think that's a big aspect of this to where if you can get a legit veteran player who can come in and start for you right away on top of those picks, that's huge. So New York is the one that I have my eye on.
Yeah. So we'll play this little role-playing, Keegs. I am the GM, and you're my assistant GM.
Sure.
Cool with that? Awesome.
Love it.
So, and what you point out, Keegan, this is why you're my right-hand man. This is why you're my assistant GM. Say we get a starting level player in return along with all these picks.
Right.
What are these picks? Potential and prospects that are nothing.
Right.
They can amount to nothing. If I get a real player in return, that's what's big. All right, so Joe Shane is picking up. The Mariners decided to bring him and Brian Dable back. So we're going to give up 1-1. I want their first. I want their second. I want next year's first, next year's second. And you spoke a little bit about selecting a player.
Right.
What do you think? Who is a player you'd want from the Giants? There's a need for the Patriots offensive line, wide receiving room, defensive line, and secondary. Let's go there. Malik Neighbors, not going to trade him. Wan'Dale Robinson, that's not worth it if I'm getting a player.
The offensive line, we talked earlier,
Andrew
Thomas, but they're not going to be willing to trade him.
There's no way
Evan Neal, is that worth anything really at this point? George thinks he's a complete bust. I think he's probably better than some of the options you have in your room right now.
Yeah.
But the name that comes to mind for me is Azeez Ojulari because they've got 3 edge defenders.
Yep.
One of them has already been paid, and then 2 of them are going to be looking to get paid soon.
Yep.
And Ojulari is going to be up before Kayvon Thibodeau, and I think he's going to be the guy. If anybody's available for them, it's going to be Azeez Ojulari. So when I look at this draft, I think 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and the best pass rusher on your team, he'll come in and immediately be that for you. You fill a void that you're looking to fill throughout the draft, and you'll do it with a player while trading that number 1 pick. This is my favorite option on the board.
Yeah, I think, and he's going to be 25 next season.
Yeah, he's a child.
Not even in his prime. So before we put in Azeez Ojulari, this year's first and second were good. Next year's first and second were good. Then that dropped it to 40% chance to be accepted. Fine. Sweeten the pot. Would it be Atlanta's pick, the third rounder, the extra third rounder? You throw that in?
I think you can go 102.
Let's try. All right, let's go back to the 4th round. 53% chance. Now, so I like this return. A first, a second, next year's first and second. So we'll have 2 seconds in this draft.
That's essentially what you'd be getting for 1-1, right? You get the 2 firsts and 2 seconds, and then Ojulari you'd be getting for that 4th round pick.
Do we even check out what the Raiders want?
We can do that. I don't know if they'll be able to offer anything like Ojulari on top of the 2 firsts and the 2 seconds.
What do you get from Vegas? Jacoby Myers?
Jacoby Myers is nice, right? It's a nice player. I think what you're looking for in terms of value, because when you move to 4, we'll talk about it.
Yep.
What's going to be your number one option? Are you going to be looking at a Travis Hunter, a guy who can play wide receiver,
a Mason Graham,
Ted McMillan, or a Mason Graham, or an offensive lineman? So
okay, let's go.
Go ahead.
Let's pull the trigger on this.
All right, let's do it.
Joe Shane's down. The Mariners are desperate. They want a quarterback because of Danny Dimes. We're going to offer the trade. So we're going to trade the 1st overall pick, the 102nd overall pick for this year's 1st and 2nd, next year's 1st and 2nd, and Azeez Ojulari, a 25-year-old pass rusher, which the Patriots need desperately. Offer accepted. Well done, Keegan.
Sick.
Well done. All right, let's resume the draft.
This is when you go and shake everybody's hand around the war room, and you're like, well done. Great way to get that trade done.
Shedeur 1, Cam Ward 2. Who do the Browns take? Ted McMillan. So Travis Hunter is there at 4.
That's what we're hoping for.
I say we
right?
do it.
Let's do it.
Let's go Travis Hunter.
I don't want a shoe getting thrown at my head when Trav gets into the office next week.
Well, he won't, because look what we did.
Right,
Well, we did trade back.
Best of both worlds, Trav. We got to piss you off at first, and then you're going to come in and you're going to say, oh, you're right. You got Travis anyway. So
and what's
all right.
Look, Travis Hunter, I really do think he'd be wide receiver 1 in this draft if he was a full-time receiver.
I agree.
And he'd be making a case for CB2 between him and Will Johnson.
If you could give me just one moment on Travis Hunter, because
Go.
something that's really gotten under my skin over the last few weeks is the prospect fatigue that we've seen from him.
What's your prospect fatigue? Like, we're just constantly talking about, so people end
He's
up
been
knocking
in the
him.
limelight for 3 years.
Yeah.
He's been the number 1 prospect in the 2025 draft for 3 years. So when you finally get to that point, you've heard it so much. He's in the Heisman conversation. There's the weird stuff about his girlfriend where if you care about that, please go touch grass.
Yep.
But it's all this stuff, and he's been in the limelight, and you've heard his name so much that you're almost sick of hearing it. And at times for me, I'm like, enough. I don't want to listen to Travis Hunter anymore. You start thinking about the offensive lineman. You start thinking about Abdul Carter, who's exploded onto the scene, and you see how valuable he is to a defense after he missed the second half of last week's game for Penn State. But the fact of the matter is, Travis Hunter's the best player in this draft. 1-1, no doubt about it. I think if they drafted him 1-1, I wouldn't be upset about it. So if you're going to trade back and try to recoup some value and then also have a chance to draft him, you do it.
Yep.
Screw the positional value. Screw what your biggest needs might be. Go get the best player in the draft, and that's Travis Hunter.
Bingo. And I think the big part, too, the draft is after free agency. Is there a wide receiver 1, an actual wide receiver 1 in the Patriots room? Because you have Travis Hunter. He's a corner opposite of Christian Gonzalez. You got 2 lockdown guys. And on the money downs, 3rd down. In the red zone, you have someone that is such an elite. You get Garrett Wilson.
Right.
You have an elite corner, and then you get Garrett Wilson on the biggest downs for your franchise quarterback. So we're drafting Travis Hunter.